an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the Afterparty, Season 2, Episode 8, Feng. In this episode, which I presume we would just say is from the perspective or genre of a TikTok, God, I felt this anxiety so much. This is the wrong time of my life to be watching this episode, guys. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Okay, so I just, what I'm saying when I express some feelings of watching this at the wrong time is I have reached a point in my career where I got just successful enough to feel comfortable. I was paying people for their work. I was able to put some money aside in savings. Like, I was feeling A-okay. And recently, my income on Patreon has dropped by almost $700 a month, which I don't know anybody out there who's in the position where they can lose $700 a month and be okay. So currently, I am really, really struggling. And the desperation of Feng in this episode, with feeling like he has this opportunity in the palm of his hand, and if he could just get somebody to back him just for a year, it would be okay. And how he doesn't want anyone to know how badly he's doing. I'll tell you guys, because you're my customers, you're my supporters. And those of you out there who are commissioning episodes and everything, I just appreciate you so much. And those of you who pledge to the Patreon, because it literally makes a difference between having running water or not, which ours got shut off this morning and just got turned back on because we were able to scrape the money together to pay the water bill. We're talking about that kind of difficulty. And but if for example, if we were in the company of Owen's grandparents, I would literally rather die than have them find out our water got turned off. I just rest in this perfect place of knowing they will never watch any of my lives or listen to any of my, they just never would. I swear way too much out of the gate. They would shut it off instantly. But I absolutely could never let them know that happened. It's not just about the shame personally of losing that income. It's also about knowing the way that Owen would feel if they knew, the way that they would likely treat Owen about it. And I don't even mean that they would be exactly shitty. They would just be that kind of concerned that feels patronizing. And maybe it would start to feel like they were judging everything that we did spend money on, that sort of micromanaging kind of feeling, because they are his bosses. They're the ones who pay him. So they know how much he makes because they pay him. And it's difficult to this feeling throughout this episode of just being on the verge of everybody kind of waving Feng off, and then they try his product and are really impressed with it, and how high his hopes get, and then it getting repossessed. So he has to do it all by hand, but he's going to do it. It sucks, but he's going to fucking power through, find people and train them on how to make these. And he's going to make the best of it and try and look at it as I'm starting here where I started then. The machine that I made, this is actually kind of poetic. I'm going to attempt to make the best of this. And then for Edgar to refuse to have any at first and then later to just not like it, and how little it would really take for him to back Feng. Feng asks for $400,000. I think that's what he asked for. Something like that. Which can sound like a lot, but I don't know if any of y'all have looked into what it costs to advertise a business lately. It's fucking insane. So I don't like the price of everything has gone up, but I have personally looked into advertising, and you guys, these packages that they want to sell start in the 4 digits start. And it's sort of like a complete waste of time if you can't at least pay that. If you find it just doesn't help. So that kind of advertising, plus this specialized equipment that he needs, plus what he wants to do is apparently kind of create a franchise. That's his ultimate dream. $400,000 is not at all unreasonable for something of the scale that Feng is imagining. And it would be so little from Edgar. I'm sorry, Ariel is in the chat and is having problems. Sorry, guys. I just typed to them because apparently they cannot hear me, so I couldn't tell them what to do. But so anyway, this was just, it was just really hard to watch. It was really hard to watch, not just because of the money aspect, although that creates a kind of desperation and anxiety that is very specific. But then when he is talking later on to Anik one-on-one about how he wanted to be the guy that was adventurous and full of surprises, just for once in his life, instead of being the safe bet, is the way he calls himself. The safe bet. Oh, that is brutal. And we hear his wife talking about him later, and it seems really true to me that she doesn't see him that way. Look, there is a reason a man like Feng should be worried. Vivian is gorgeous, and no offense, but she is way out of his league. She is. The fact that he pulled that is a small miracle in and of itself. So, yeah, I could see just being I gotta do something. And she's already had an affair with your brother. This dude is back in your lives now, at least temporarily. I really appreciated too how, even in Feng's point of view, when he has this really reasonable dislike of his brother, he can't help but portray his brother as this goofy, accidental kind of ruiner of the fun. Anytime that Ulysses shows up and ruins a moment, it doesn't feel malicious. Feng doesn't seem to see him as the bad guy exactly. It's just sort of why? Why is it always you? Why do you always have to be the one to fuck it up for me? Because Ulysses interrupts with this fucking stringed instrument thing that he's doing while Feng is in the middle of his pitch. Later on, he is about to do something with his, I can't remember if he's about to unveil the truck, but Ulysses comes in and sort of steals the thunder there. And then the moment where Grace is left alone on the dance floor, you see him getting ready to sort of step up, which it never occurred to me that he probably should be the one as her father. But Ulysses just felt so appropriate because of this being the first time she has seen him in a long time. And I guess I was sort of assuming that she had had a father-daughter dance already, but I don't know if she did. Not everybody does that, you know. So I didn't consider that maybe Feng would have been hurt by the fact that he is the one who stepped up. And he tries to play it off, but like this actor too, I really have to give him some props for this, because as much as I don't want to try and pretend like he was an amazing actor or anything, but I felt the moment when the camera is on him after he reacts to Ulysses and him trying to like hand wave it a little bit, that was one of the realest moments for me, where he is just so like devastated, and it's such a big public moment, and I really felt him, and I admire this, I really felt him trying real hard not to make it about himself. Like, you know, he could have had this moment of I'm her father, I should be the one doing this. And instead, it's like, you know what? I don't want to make a scene. Ulysses is doing a nice thing. I'm going to sort of back off here, even though I am super hurt. It isn't about me. And you know what? There is just, I have real admiration for that, because I am somebody who has a hard time not making it about themselves. Sometimes I will admit it. I'm not awesome all the time. So anyway, I really, like, there were a lot of moments in this episode where, even though this character, Ken Jeong, that's the actor's name, right? I think. There's a lot of moments where it could easily be sort of played as like, oh God, what a loser. I never felt that way. I just really did feel like, here's a guy who has put a lot into a product that he believes in and loves, that is a labor of love in one of the most literal ways possible. And you guys, I'm just realizing as I'm looking through the, oh my God, that's really funny. I'm so sorry. I'm watching the opening credits again, and that truck silhouette that I thought was like akin to a Breaking Bad truck is so clearly the Bao Bing truck. Oh my God. When I tell you that sailed right the fuck past me, that is so embarrassing, but well, there it is. Jesus Christ. But, he isn't somebody who's like, because there's a very different sense between a guy like this who has something that they have perfected, that they know a lot of people haven't tried and just need to give it a chance, and that they have a real serious vision for, versus somebody who's just out here like attempting to always borrow money for their latest scheme. Because we know that type of person. Everybody has one of those in their family, or was that person themselves. No shame in it. I was that person for a while before I found podcasting, because I just knew I couldn't work in retail forever. But I was like, I don't know what else to do. And so I was trying all kinds of random shit. And now I understand that, like, you know, what I am good at lends itself to this kind of performance. Whereas previously, anytime that I mentioned my talent for performing, people would try and tell me that meant I was a good salesman. And I was just like, you do not know me at all, because I have the opposite of the kind of personality that gets pushy to make somebody spend money. I'm not the one. But this is somebody with a plan. And this is somebody who is in a bad place with the money, and I feel like could make it work if they were given a break. Just one break. And that probably this could take off. And I really want that for him, as long as he is doing this out of a genuine excitement. But the way that he talks about it being for his wife and for her to not see him as the safe bet, I am extremely concerned that he doesn't actually care about that this much, and that all of his reasonings for getting into it are going to lead to some sort of resentment and failure because it was all for the wrong reasons, you know? So, all right, so let's go to the very first scene when they are talking to Kyler, and they're getting Kyler is the audiovisual guy, but also is the, like, is he a nephew? I can't even remember what relationship he has, but evidently has a very strong, like, social media following. So what it is that Feng is trying to do is utilize this kid's natural social media talents to boost his business. And this is actually a very, very solid marketing strategy. This is the sort of thing that I am trying to figure out how to do more effectively, but it's not natural for me because have been so long used to doing things this way, getting on a mic in front of my computer, editing it, and it being a sound only, like, even the videos, these are not edited and they're just sort of a regular episode. So I have to completely, like, rethink the way I treat what I do for social media. And he has a really great in with somebody who's, first of all, good at it. And I say good in quotes, like, he knows what he's doing. He's not amazing, but he manages to make it at least entertaining enough that it doesn't feel painful. And also the fact that Feng is, like, smart and knows to do this. The fact that this dessert is so visual, it's just very beautiful, and watching the ice get shaved would be something that I bet would go viral because it's, like, I'm sure a little bit hypnotizing to watch, you know? This is all a really, really good start. And, like, the design of the truck, come on, don't you want to know what that is? That drives, like, down the street next to you, and you see, like, the name of it. Don't you go Google that later to be like, what was that? You see somebody walking down the street with a giant bowl of this and the fresh fruit and everything. Aren't you going to be like, ooh, what is that? Where did you get that? Like, this is the kind of thing that social media was made for, are like these sorts of types of marketing that are highly visual, and especially if you can make it sort of, like, cute and Instagram worthy, as they call it. This is a really, really good approach. So it's just so sad to see it going down the way that it does. But yeah, so he's talking about how his daughter's getting married, and he just starts crying. He's clearly, like, a really emotional guy. So yeah, he's explaining to Danner, like, that's why he brought Kyler. And there's a whole thing with him, like, I won't get into the actual jokes because they're not great, but he doesn't know, like, the name for TikTok. And when he talks about what Bao Bing is, there's a passion there that seems genuine. I'm going to read this. Imagine ribbons of shaved ice so fine it melts the second it hits your tongue. But it's not plain old frozen H2O. It's a proprietary mix of water, milk with a creamy mouthfeel, and topped with a mountain of fresh fruit. It's casual but elegant. Healthy but indulgent. With the king of Bing, it's love at first bite. Now, I'm so sorry. That's fucking a perfect elevator pitch. This has been crafted. You know, he has worked on this. Come on. And it has paid off, sir. That is such a pitch. I have very little interest in, like, icy sorts of desserts, and this got me extremely interested. So, yeah, definitely on board. And Danner says, that sounds delicious. And he says, Vivian and I first had it on a trip to Taiwan a few years back. And when we returned home, I started the King of Bing and just opened up a second location. And of course, the catering truck Anik destroyed, which later we see what happened. And Anik's car barely tapped that truck, and it left a scratch, not even a dent, a scratch about the size of a quarter on an otherwise incredibly busy painted mural, so that this would be next to undetectable by most people. But Feng can't help but completely set him up. He not only accuses him of destroying the thing, but he also, later on we find out, tries to tell his wife that the reason the truck is gone is because of the damage Anik did. But he at that point begins to apologize and clearly feel bad because he's realizing how unfair he has been about the whole thing. But yeah, this the whole episode is just sort of setting up that a lot of the motive for him would be money. And yet it would all depend on him knowing for sure that Grace had not signed the prenup agreement, which I am not sure he knew, but I also don't think that you can prove that he didn't know. And it's just, this incredible thing. I keep thinking about how, if that were to be true, Grace would inherit. But, that is true. That's literally what has happened, is Edgar died and she hadn't signed it. Literally. So she will inherit that money unless there is some way of stipulating that she doesn't because she's been accused of murder. If she got convicted, would that keep her from inheriting? I would assume so, right? I don't think that you get to keep the gains of your crime or whatever. If there was not enough evidence, I assume she would inherit. And then what? I would feel so guilty, even though I would be amazing, I have money now. How do you I would feel the urge to give at least half of it back and immediately, just out of principle. Not saying she should, but I'm saying that's sort of how I would feel about it. I love the fact when he's trying to find the keys and they have been locked in the van. Oh my God. He is so close to getting them out too, and the window's open, but they just need a step ladder or something. He could climb right in. It'd be no problem. So this is when Feng is you guys can fast forward past this part. This is just a bunch of business stuff. Because he gets a phone call, and it turns out to be the lender that got him this van. And they're asking for the payments. He's 2 payments behind. And he is insisting that he will get his money. And then we have this complete turnaround, because it really is sort of as soon as Anik knows this about him, now Anik has this upper hand and he has to kiss his ass. A second ago, it was Anik, you destroyed my truck. But then as soon as this happens, he says, Anik, you're a small business owner. You know what it's like. And Anik says, I mean, absolutely. Hell, we small business owners, we're the backbone of the economy. And then we get this amazing, incredibly uncomfortable moment where Feng says, you could say that again. And Anik laughs and says, yeah. And then looks over and sees Feng waiting, just with his eyebrows up, desperate. And Anik awkwardly realizes and says, oh, we're the backbones of the economy? The intensity. Oh my God, it's so much. So yeah, this is the connection point where now, I don't know if it's just I don't want to be ungenerous and say that he's only being nice to Anik because he doesn't want Anik to tattle on him, because that would suggest that once this information about the money gets out, that he's going to go back to being shitty to Anik because Anik no longer has leverage on him. And I don't really think that's the issue. I think he feels sheepish and foolish. And so he has changed the way he's treating Anik because he perceives himself as looking bad. And it's not about the leverage itself. It's just embarrassment, you know? So we're interspersed here with scenes of Vivian finally telling her daughters that she had an affair with their uncle. And there was a whole scene with Anik where he like tries to sort of like not say it, but she makes him say about the affair with Ulysses. And here she's like trying to do the same thing with her daughters, and then eventually she just has to say it. And they at first think she has brought them here to confess to the crime. But then when they realize what it's actually about, there's a really fascinating moment where Zoe says, I stayed with Brett for 8 years trying to live up to your marriage. And that I really thought was interesting in that, like, because I grew up with a parent I knew was cheating from a young age and who cheated for years, literally, ongoing. And so I have never been under this delusion that my parents had a good relationship. They fought all the time. I was waiting for them to divorce from like age 9. So to me, the concept of seeing my parents as this like goal is really foreign. And I'm kind of, on the one hand, jealous that some people have that. And on the other hand, grateful that I won't even say that I was lied to, because or wasn't lied to. I found out about it. My mom didn't know that I knew for like a decade. So I discovered the affair on my own through a combination of light snooping and instinct, because kids are smart. And so the idea that you would like stay in a relationship that you aren't feeling great about simply because your parents made it work through thick and thin and you think you should too, that is a really rough place to be coming from in general. And then to find out that your parents actually weren't having the relationship you thought. It made me see like Zoe in a different way. And also think about like my various friends out there who had a similar idea of their parents' relationships and stuff, because I have just always been aware of the option for divorce. It's just always been something that's like, no, if things get bad enough. And there are a lot of people who don't really think like that. Like divorce is kind of off the table unless there's genuine physical danger involved for a lot of people. And having seen a relationship that did not involve physical abuse, but yet was still really toxic and abusive, I've always been somebody who's just like, no, there's ways out. You need to take care of yourself. So anyway, eventually when they're like, just how could you not tell us? She says, well, everyone has their secrets. And that's sort of like the end of the scene with all of them. But I liked that ending because I think that's quite true. And I think that's hinting at the fact that there's other shit Vivian hasn't shared also that we're probably going to find out about. Okay, we'll go back to Feng. This is where we see Anik arriving and the whole thing with his car. It's so funny because in his POV, he describes like chasing after the car, and he like trips and stumbles and smashes the little, I think there's a puppet or something somebody made for him. I think Grace made it, right? A tea cozy. And he's like, face first on the gravel. The car, it's this massive like disaster. But when we see it in life, it's rolling gently. He doesn't even run after it. He just sort of watches as it rolls and talks about what he thinks happened as it's rolling. And I was sort of like, sir, do you not have any urgency about stopping this? Why aren't you stopping this? And then when it hits the truck, it's just this like tap, as I said. And when we see a little bit later that it's like a total nothing. Like there's a really funny filter that Kyler put on that there's like an explosion, and eventually when we see it, yeah, that scratch, it's like absolutely nothing. Scratch City, bro. Oh my God. It's you could literally lick your thumb and wipe it off, and then it'd be fine. God. All right. So I'm just thinking about the fact that Anik made that seem like such a big deal. And that feels like the sort of thing that you would do. You're trying to make a good impression on your in-laws, potential in-laws, and this happens. I see talking up that event quite a bit. So, oh my God, I forgot about, we asked Isabel to hire like a videographer, but she said none of us had a face for video. So this is why he brings in Kyler. And I wish that I had somebody doing this, because I had never thought of just asking people to like record on their phones. But I do wish that I had video of that evening. I have video of the ceremony, which is great, but that's it. So we see him like at the bar and just trying to like cozy up to people, making introductions, seeing family that he hasn't seen in a long time. And I love when the camera like slowly pans by Travis attempting to pay the waiter, who's just saying, I don't know what you're asking me to do. So the whole like pride thing, this is so tricky because I know I have pride. We all know this, right? My pride with family is such a weird thing. I feel like I have more when it comes to Owen's family than my own, because I know that my own is so full of fuck ups that I don't really worry about impressing them. Does that make sense? But Owen's family is so like traditional, conservative, that there's so much more judgment, and I see them much more often, that I think I worry much more about them than anyone. So when, I don't know if it's a grandmother or an older aunt, comes and says like to Grace, you must be so proud. And she says, of course I am. My dad is the king of Bing. It's very clear that what he is hearing from her is like, that's why she's proud of me, is this business thing. Which I believe she is reaching for because it's a nice shorthand for like what he has accomplished. But I don't think that's really what it is that she loves about him. It's just an example, you know, but he is really, I think, kind of assigning all of the respect and love that he has from his wife and daughters to this like business at this point, which is not accurate. But yeah, the moment where Ulysses comes in, it turns out he didn't like flip out and leave because Ulysses turned up. It's actually because the fucking truck was being towed, which I loved this development. Him leaving because his brother showed up was completely valid. Like I didn't even think that was necessarily like a shitty move. I think it could have been seen as childish, but if you weren't prepared for this guy to be here and you guys never actually made up, I genuinely I had no problem with it, you know? If he had stayed and tried to like be as gracious as he could, I would respect that. But this is a difficult thing to have sprung on you during an already like emotional time. However, it turning out to be because the truck is getting towed is just such a nice sort of desperate touch. And it's kind of interesting to me when I step back and sort of think about the way that Edgar bailed on Grace in the middle of the dance floor because something was going on with the safe, presumably. And I think about her father, like, getting up in the middle of the rehearsal dinner because this thing is going on with the truck. This makes sense. You know, like, she's drawn to somebody who maybe has some mixed up priorities or is trying to do too many things at once, or I don't know. I don't think that Feng would abandon her on the dance floor for the sake of his truck. I don't think, but I'm not sure. He's in a real weird place in this episode. So he eventually makes a deal with the guy who's towing and is just like, can you at least let me unload some things? And that's the best he can do. He's asking for this man to, like, let him keep the car overnight. Guy can't do that. He has a job to do. And finally, he's like, all right, sure, you have 5 minutes. So Feng is able to go into the freezer and he gets all of the ice out for the machine, which is in these, like, cylinders. And it's very interesting because I hadn't considered that it would literally be shaved like that. I thought that it would, like, be extruded, I guess. So when I saw that it was, like, in this thing that could spin, I was like, oh, that is really a neat idea. Like, again, this would be really interesting to see. And his wife catches him loading that ice into the freezer of the house. And he has to say, like, the truck was totaled because Anik really did a number on it. So, and I love Anik turning and looking at him and him just saying, I'm sorry, like, under his breath. So, yeah, he's going to use the machine where it all began. It's actually better this way, right, Kyler? He's trying so hard to, like, get this to seem better than it is. So then she pulls him aside and is like, are you sure you're okay with Ulysses being here, is the subtext. And he is like, as long as Grace is happy, I'm happy. And she's like, really? And it's a extremely sweet moment. He's trying to make it not a big deal. It's clear it does hurt him that this dude is here, but he is really not wanting to make a scene over it. And finally she leaves and she has the fucking camel milk, chunky camel milk all over her. So she goes to get changed and he goes back to the barn where the rehearsal dinner is taking place and sees his brother talking to his daughters and joking around with them. And it seems like this fills him with a new fire. I love when he says, Henry Ford, when he didn't sell the first Model T, he says, I don't know the word quit. And then we cut to him in the present, Henry Ford, hardcore racist, but boy, does he give a good quote. That is true. He had some good quotes. There's also some quotes that are like attributed to him that I don't think are actually him, as with so many historical figures. But the bit here, it just feels like he sees his brother and is just determined to make himself more interesting and win his daughter's attention. So it's so disorienting, you guys, because the whole way that this is filmed, with it being a social media post, it's all like black bars on the side to make it a sort of vertical, like, portrait mode orientation. And it's just a really, like, strange viewing experience for almost the whole episode to be like that, except when we cut to the present, you know? So this is when he's like, we're going to get Edgar to invest. That's how this is going to go. And we're, you know, the whole way it looks, with the fact that he hasn't told his wife and daughters, that's like one of the bigger problems that Danner points out. Because he tries to say, like, the business is sound, and the money's tied up in construction. I had a plan. And she's like, yeah, but you weren't even going to ever tell them. If he invested and you got the truck back, you would just never let them know you had been struggling, huh? Which I really get the urge to not tell anybody. But I also do think being dishonest and presenting everything as flawless and if not necessarily effortless as not having gone off without a hitch, does its own kind of damage, as we have seen from the way that Grace and Zoe reacted to hearing that their mom cheated. Maybe if they had been aware their marriage wasn't perfect, they wouldn't have a kind of like expectation or behavior now. So yeah, maybe just start to be like more honest, you know? So then we have Kyler, who is in this, like, he's sharing a room with his aunt, and she was in the bathroom for 4 hours last night. Kyler is playing a game where he's trying to like toss some sort of like chocolate candy into her mouth. They look like off-brand like M&Ms. They're perfectly round, so they're like rolling around on the nightstand. Eventually he gets one into her mouth and she wakes up because like she's almost choking to death. It's just the weirdest thing. I am starting to wonder if Kyler is going to become some of the key to this, because if he was in the same room, is it possible that like the two of them saw something, or maybe the aunt is the key? I don't know. So then we have the scene where he is trying to do his pitch to Edgar. I love that Edgar puts his hands over his nipples as he gets out of the pool. Oh my God, this actor must have had a really good time. And maybe I'll give him a chance to invest early. You looking for investment? How much? Whoa, easy there, Tiger. But like, I really feel what Feng is trying to do, which is come at him from the side, is what you would do with a traditional investor. And Edgar isn't that guy. He is so much more direct and literal. And I just think he would have responded better to Feng just coming into his office one day and sitting down and being like, hey, look, I have this business and here are the numbers. I think it has a lot of potential. Would you be interested in investing? I understand the way that Feng is trying to play it. And if it were like almost anybody else, I think it would be the way to do it. I think he's actually not bad at this. But I just feel like he misjudged his audience here. And Edgar is a numbers guy. Very, like, just more than anybody that I've ever seen on television. Show him the interest, show him the social media views, show him the way that you were able to open a second location. Just, there's a lot of potential here. I think he's right, but you need to prove that. And whether or not he personally likes the product isn't actually relevant. I understand thinking that that's the way to get him on board, but it doesn't matter. And he knows that as a businessman. Like, I think were Feng to show him, for example, the video of everybody at the wedding, excuse me, I don't know why I had the hiccups so bad, but everybody at the reception really loving this stuff. I think Edgar has the kind of mind where he would be like, okay, it's not for me, but clearly there is an untapped market here. Look at how these people are reacting to this. And I just think that could be the exact approach that would have worked, and Feng wouldn't have had to put himself through all this. It's unclear whether Feng just misjudges Edgar and how to approach him, if the desperation just made it so that he wasn't like careful. Maybe he just didn't get to know him well enough to tell that's how he should have handled that. Or maybe he even now doesn't realize that he kind of went about it in a way that wouldn't work for Edgar. But, oh my God, his brother playing this fucking instrument and walking up with that like high kneed dance. I can't it's so funny. He's so insufferable. Ugh, I really hate him. Anyway, okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just watching the moment. You did interrupt. Let's go, Kyler. We have caterers to train. So then we see him trying to show this girl how to do the ice shaving. And he's like, it's so easy. You could train a child to use it. It's patent pending. So then we see this poor girl. He has her cut it at least like 8 times and is getting so frustrated with the fact that she doesn't seem to know how to do it. I also want to mention, because like the way that he talked about it was, to me, it sounded like it's water and milk and then an assortment of fruit that you put on top. But based on the look of the ice like cylinders that he had, which were different colors, they are infused with a fruit flavor. And this, for me, really amps up my interest, just for the record. But yeah, he can't get anybody to like, oh my God. He can't get anybody to do it right. There's at one point this like black man, and he's like, did I hurt your feelings? Is it me? I'm sorry. Because the guy looks like he's going to cry. And then eventually we go to like Sebastian's fucking like short-tempered friend. Yes, you're my guy. This is my guy. You're going to make us a hit. And he pulls out this bowl. This ice is so wild looking, you guys. It's, first of all, a massive serving. And this is like evidently the usual serving. So it probably is just like, it looks like way more than it is. But this looks like at least 4 cups. You know, like picture like if you took 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's and piled them both into one bowl. It's almost like that much. And that just seems like an awful lot. Even if it is ice and mostly like air and water, I don't know if I could eat all of that. But maybe I can. Maybe it's so light it just goes down like nothing. But yeah, I love when he tries to do the make it rain and he attempts to like shove the ice off the top like they're dollar bills. Oh, what a mess he makes. So then we have him walking Grace down the aisle, and this like high-pitched keening cry as they're walking. And it's a precious moment. I really do love the fact that Danner she is in the middle of saying that's so cute as we're hearing him with that high-pitched cry in the background, still like continuing over her voice. It was very well done. Oh, I forgot. We briefly cut over to Isabel, who is emptying a bottle of pills down the toilet and flushing them. Don't know what that's about. I don't know if those are the Adderall that she had like taken from Grace earlier or what. Was it Grace or... I think it was Grace, yeah. Because Grace was putting it in his drink. So then we go to the... oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. We go to the first dance with Grace and Edgar. I didn't notice this the first time, that he is smiling watching his daughter dance as Anik like climbs out from underneath a table in the background, and there's like a couple that looks at him like, the fuck? And I just totally somehow missed that he was doing that, and also just continues forward on hands and knees. He doesn't get up. He is still looking for that fucking lizard. So, oh my God. But yeah, so he finally is like, all right, come on, we've got to start shaving ice. And then we get the answer to that question that I had forgotten all about, where when Zoe was making her like maid of honor toast, there was this horrible sound, and nobody knows where it's coming from, and they're able to like, they have to just cut it short. It turns out that was the fucking shaved ice machine. That was the Bao Bing machine. And he didn't even know that he cut off Zoe's speech. And when he realizes that in the present, seeing this footage, he is so devastated. Like, he really hates himself for that one. Which I have to say, he was so hard on himself that I was pleasantly surprised, because I think I would have expected him to realize how loud it was and just be like, oh, well, we have things to do. It's noisy. Get over it. But the fact that he was this upset, I was like, oh, okay. So he's actually considerate. He was just unaware, you know. He should have been more aware, granted, but still. So then we have the Bao Bing going out to everybody. And I will tell you what, kiddos. Again, this shit looks good. First of all, we've got one that looks like it's surrounded by like perfect spheres, which I think are melon balls. Then there's one that's arranged with strawberries. There's one that I think is, I don't know if that's like raisins or if it's some kind of fruit that's been sort of chopped. At first, I thought it was, what do you call it? I thought it was, oh my God, raisins. But that doesn't really go with the fresh fruit thing. You know, I paused it. I think those beans, there are beans that are used in desserts in a lot of Asian food. And maybe that's what that is. It's like those like red beans. I can't remember what they're called. But yeah, these look beautiful. And everybody is like pretty impressed with it. I love when Anik tries it and he's clearly going to put a good face on it. And you see the moment where he realizes that he isn't going to have to be polite, that he actually likes it and can say that and be sincere about it. And that he's just so relieved that he can be. And I know that feeling so well. Oh my, especially around food. Like 80% of my experience with eating food at other people's homes is me having to be nice about it because it's bad. And every time I hit that like 20% where it's actually really good, what a relief. It's so nice to actually ask for seconds and be sincere. It's so nice to like not have to come up with a reason like, oh, I ate before this, I'm not that hungry, which I've had to do. Like, yeah, I felt for him. I also love Sebastian sending it away and then stopping and being like, actually, you know what? Stick that down here, special occasion. And he digs into it after all and is like into it. Oh my God, I forgot there's a guy like on the dance floor holding it as he's dancing. There's not even a spoon in it. Sir, you're just about to make a mess. Anik's face, and then it says even Urkel loves it, and he puts like the suspenders and glasses on him. And then we have Sebastian's two cohorts off to the side, and eventually Kyler had wanted this dude to help cut it, to slice it, and they couldn't find him because he was up to no good. So here Kyler's like, hey, where were you? We were looking for you. And this dude gets very defensive about it and eventually just sends Kyler running with just like, well, hey, you know what? Go and get another one of these things. Why do we have to share? We're not animals. So finally, it's the beautiful one with all the strawberries that they are going to send out to Edgar. But unfortunately, Edgar has cake and doesn't want it. And when Kyler kind of tries to press the issue, he stands up and says, I said we had cake. And it's a really interesting moment because Edgar is genuinely pretty intimidating in that instant. But he isn't aggressive. And I really wish that more, not just dudes, people, but mainly dudes, could understand this vibe of like making it clear what you want and not having to be aggro about it. You know, the only like aggressive thing he did here was stand to speak with him, which you could take as like really aggro. But I don't take it that way. It felt more to me like Edgar had tried just brushing him off and being polite. This person is being pushy for reasons that he doesn't understand. And so he is in his head responding in kind and being like, all right, he didn't take me seriously, so now I'll stand up and say it. And I love when he says it and looks at this kid with his brow sort of furrowed, like, don't you understand? Like, and Kyler just takes it back, and you can see how upset Feng is. Like, he has to have it. So he tries going back out there again. But when he sees that his wife and daughter are out there having some and having a great time and really happy with it, I think there's just a feeling of like, I can't try and push him in front of them. I'm going to have to find a way to get this stuff into his hands without them being aware that I'm attempting to get him to invest. So then we see him creating a perfect one later on to give to Edgar at the after party. And unfortunately for him, the timing of it is just perfect for if the Bao Bing had been poisoned. And it's that devastating scene where Edgar doesn't like it. And then he tries to give it to Roxana and she hates it. We actually see this little like CGI lizard coughing and horking. Oh my God. It was just awful. So this makes it look like, because he gives it to Kyler and is like, don't worry about it. Throw this in the trash. It's done. That is clearly him like saying, all right, that door is closed. But it very much sounds like somebody saying, don't worry about it. I got the poison into his system and now we're golden and we just have to, you know. But then the next video is him recording a FaceTime between him and Kyler, where he is telling him about all of the ideas he came up with the night before. How can we sleep when I have so many new ideas? Birthday party. Second idea, Martin Luther Bing Day. Third idea, something that packs a punch, spicy Bing. Pow Bing. Circle that. Some of these are better than others. And what he says to them in the present is, does that look like a man whose money troubles were over? I was awake all night trying to come up with other ideas because I was flipping out because no, my money problem was not solved. And I was like, that's a really convincing argument to me. Like, honestly, that really, to me, that wrapped it. I understand that that's not enough, but as somebody who's been in this position, yeah, I feel like that's true. And then she says, you had other reasons to kill him, didn't you? Which I think she means like to cover up the affair or to hide the fact that, he's Grace's father, Ulysses is. But he just gets up and he storms out at this point because he finally realizes y'all are accusing me and I don't have to talk to you about anything. And Eek chases after him, and in the hallway he says, look, if we're going to get you and Grace out of this, you need to start being more honest, and not just with us, but with your family. Between your money trouble and Edgar knowing about the affair, and he says this is not about Edgar. It's about Vivian. It's always been about Vivian. In Taiwan, it was Vivian who fell in love with Bao Bing. When we got home, I built my own machine, and when it worked, she was so excited. It was Vivian who told me I should open up my own shop. She came up with the name. My wife is my life. And Vivian was so proud of me, of us. And this is when he says, and I just wanted, I didn't want to lose that. I want her to see me as more than the safe bet, the boring engineer. For once, I wanted her to see me as adventurous, like him. And I have to say, he's doing his best, but his emotional performance here was not totally hitting for me. I'm not trying to be a dick. I actually think that when it comes to like portraying emotion, comedic actors can be better than anybody, because you need to be able to tap into a lot of different things in order to make things funny. So you need to have a kind of range that is I just feel lends itself to more complex depictions of emotion. But yeah, this wasn't really working for me. It doesn't matter ultimately, but I just wanted to address it because there were some points where I really was feeling it, like when he sees his brother go out into the dance floor. But then here I wasn't so much. And I'll be honest, you guys, I think a part of why it wasn't hitting is because I first knew him in Community, and there is an arc eventually where he loses his memory, and a lot of the sad, pitiful faces that he is making during this like episode are similar to the weird faces that he was making during that Community arc. So I think that's part of where it's coming from. But we cut right from there to his wife saying like the adventure wasn't love. And when Grace says, "How did you know about Dad?" she says, "I love who I am with him." And Grace smiles and nods and then says, "I think that I'm in love with Joanna or Hannah." And just saying that at this point, it doesn't look good. Zoe says that's how she feels with Anik, which is a big deal. But yeah, I like that everything is beginning to come out. So then we cut to Isabel and that moment where the Bao Bing is being brought to Edgar and she's saying, "You're not going to get away with this." And him saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." I am so excited for her POV, you guys, because first of all, the thumbnail makes it look like we're doing a sort of like noir, but a femme fatale style where she's going to be wearing like feathered robes and turbans and drinking lots of martinis, which I am extremely down for that aesthetic. And also, based on the way Edgar responds to her here, saying he doesn't know what she's talking about, I actually believe him. And I have a suspicion that we are going to see an Isabel that feels like she is being persecuted somehow in a way that's actually in her head. Or just a series of misunderstandings. I don't know. But I feel like somebody has been fucking with her on the DL and she thinks there's something really nefarious happening when it's not. So that's the best I can do as far as predicting. But what I'm sort of imagining is the girl last season, whose name I can't remember, who had the thriller episode. And she kept thinking that somebody was after her. And really, it was like a bit of a joke that was just meant to fuck with her head. And it went way too far. That's sort of what I'm thinking, but I don't know. All right, I better wrap this up because I'm over time. But thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate you all. I hope that you're enjoying the coverage. I'm really enjoying watching the show. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.